All right. So today got Lachlan Jones, sitting down to have a chat. So thanks for joining us, mate. Lockie's been sort of an Australian triathlete who, again, another athlete in probably 24 who had another breakout sort of season, making his way onto the World Cup stage with a couple of World Cups and also with some podiums in Conti Cups across the world. So Lockie has a very unique story to tell and has had a unique pathway. So I thought he would be an interesting athlete to get onto the chat and find out sort of how he's made his own way through the pathway and forged himself into the elite athlete he is today. So thanks, Lockie. Thanks for coming.
No, of course. Thanks for having me. Happy to chat.
No. Yeah, awesome, mate. Look, mate. What I've been chatting about is sort of what we talked about earlier, was just trying to, get a bit more light shined on that black hole that is, post high school, and how do you, take those first steps to becoming an elite triathlete, going out of juniors where you might feel like you're on top of the world and getting podiums, and you might think, oh, this is going to be a pretty seamless transition. Yeah, just trying to shine a light on, how different athletes have made their way through it. So, mate, why don't you just, let's maybe just start at the start of things. And what did sport look like for you growing up, in your earlier teenage years?
Yeah.
And sort of, at what point did you actually start doing triathlons?
Yeah, so I started off as a clubby. So I was a surf lifesaver here on the Gold Coast. So I was out of North Surf Club, and for me, that was the dream. Like, I was doing that from 5, 6 years of age. That was the goal. Didn't even know what triathlon was. I was just family were in that direction, and all my friends were surf lifesavers. So for when I was 6 to about 12, 13, that was all I wanted. I wanted to be an Ironman and competing in the surf. And then I was dabbling a little bit in sort of cross country as that kind of came into the school system, and doing sort of the cross country athletic scene, and just had a bit of a natural knack as a runner. So dabbling in a bit of those two there, and then I think it was 14 when triathlon was sort of, we would do the aquathlon. I think 12, 13 would do the aquathlon, and I had my running coach at the time from the school. He just, he knew me as a nipper doing surf lifesaving, and I could run. So he thought, just go do this. And I was 12 years old, and I think I won the state championship in the aquathon. So we kind of thought, okay, we're onto something here. What's the next level of this? And that was triathlon. And I had no idea how to ride a bike, properly. Like, I'd ride around my dirty BMX bike as a kid, but that was really it. It was still everything was surf lifesaving. That's all I really cared about. And just bought a secondhand, crappy old road bike, and just learned on the flat pedals and gave it a go. At that time, a couple of triathlons I did, there weren't a lot of, I guess, very good swimmers. So I'd always, come out the front of a swim. I'd fall back to about 30th on the bike because I was still learning, and try to run my way through the pack. So it was a bit of a slow start for me. I didn't really care too much about triathlon. It was all very much life saving. So I was dabbling in both, and I guess I just got better and better. I joined a local tri club with Service Paradise Triathlon. I was under Jenny Alcorn for quite a few years, and I think that we had a very, very good junior team under SPTC at the time. Your Kai Wild was there, Kane Richards, Jace Grant, who was really good at the time. So we had a really good squad, which is obviously pretty incredible to see some of those athletes going on where they are now. I think just as time went on, my love for triathlon grew. I got a little bit better, knew how to actually ride a bike in the end, and made a couple sort of state championships, and went on to wanting to make national teams. And I guess as my love for triathlon grew, my love for surf kind of faded, and had to make that decision about 14, 15. I think it was about 15 when I decided to give surf away. I still have a deep passion for that sport, but triathlon just outweighed it. at the time, and so I made my way into triathlon.
Yeah, because that's a pretty hard one, hey, because the surf sport culture is quite strong, and
I think it's quite strong now. It's kind of fun. It's kind of funny how as soon as now I'm taking triathlon very seriously, it's almost, I guess, flipped the other way, and now the surf scene is really pumping right now. So
yeah,
I'm not saying I regret my decision, but it is funny how
there's a bit more money in it now.
Yeah, it seems like there's a bit more money than when I was doing it, but I mean, no regrets in what I did, but I think the surf life-saving background, it definitely builds a very strong character. You look at some of the guys some of the Aussie guys that we've had transfer. You Braden Mercer. You look at how good he's doing at the moment. Emma Jeffcoat,
just really strong athletes coming.
Really strong athletes. Yeah, you're really strong athletes. So I think it's I definitely think there could be some hidden talent in the surf sport that could make their way over to triathlon.
Yeah. And I don't think it's for lack of trying that. Triathlon in Australia has tried to get those athletes across. Yeah. But I think, just like you were saying, I guess the culture there and everything that's built around it is getting stronger.
So and it is every year the support in that sport is just getting better and better. So when we can't match that, there's no reason to come this way.
I think the second it becomes an Olympic sport, you watch it, like Australia will just be dominated.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think yes. I also believe that that once upon a time the Europeans didn't know how to do triathlon either. So I know a lot of those clubbies are sort of saying we want it to be international, but careful what you wish for, because when those Europeans, if they grab a hold of a sport, they'll grab a hold of it with two hands.
They know how to sport.
Yeah, they'll take over. So once upon a time we were laughing at the Europeans as triathletes, and
true.
Now they've got us in a vice grip. So
for sure.
But it's a cool transition between the two sports.
Yeah, cool. So you did. It sounds like you did all the all schools type of things.
Yeah.
You went to nationals, I assume.
Yep. So did all the school sport stuff. That was always a bit of a main focus. I think I just liked the school system. That was really one of the only races that you got to travel as a team. That's why that was always a priority. And as a young kid, I'm such a big believer in sport should be fun. You shouldn't be taking it seriously, or you shouldn't be taking it too seriously until you're out of school. You got to have a life. You got to have the social aspect of it. So that was the reason I loved it. I loved going away with all my mates. That was awesome. It's like getting the Queensland jersey was like getting the Australian jersey now. It just meant everything. Like you were the cool kid if you got one of those. We're still doing at the time. If I remember correctly, we had the state system as well. So we were still competing for there's Queensland school sport, and there was Queensland tri. So at that time, there were separate races, which were your super sprint weekends. We had races down at Penrith, your Devonport Australian champs. So
that's right, because it was the Australian youth junior.
So you had a youth series, you had a junior series, and you had an under 23 series.
And I think they even had a race in New Zealand as part of that series.
There was I raced in New Plymouth as a junior. Yeah. So that it didn't necessarily have that team aspect, but it was more racing for your state, and that was essentially the pathway. The youth. I remember racing as a youth. Actually, I raced as a youth competitor. And then you had those you very much knew who you were racing and the category you were racing. And there was that clear sort of pathway up into the under 23s. Every year you would go, I've got 2 more years of a junior or 2 more years of a youth, and then I'm jumping up a category. I'm not too sure what it's like now. I'm obviously out of that system, but
there's definitely no series as such.
We would race, I think, three at least, 3 or 4 times. So and that would go to an overall, series champion, especially in the juniors. So we always had something. We always had something to look forward to, whether it was a school sport race or the Queensland Triathlon. And again, I was very fortunate to be surrounded by guys like Matty Hauser was there at the time, Matt Roberts, Clyde Wild. Like we were surrounded by just incredible talent. I remember it's funny because they're friends now, but you know, I had Luke Williams poster, I had Matt Roberts poster, and I had a Matt Hauser poster. Like I had their transition posters pinned up on my wall. Like that. It's
so that sounds like around the days at NTA as well.
NTA was around, yeah. I remember seeing posters of them, like they're all getting their giant bikes, and it was the NTA. Like that was the goal for me. I just saw, and it definitely formed a real obsession with categorization and being a part of the NTA and getting that Australian jersey. I think Craig Walton might have been the coach at the time, and I think Dan Atkins might have been. Yeah, and there was quite a few different coaches, and you definitely had your QAS squads, and then there was the National Performance Squad, and there was a squad in Sydney, there was a squad in Western Australia, there was the high performance squads everywhere.
So that would have been the Sydney one would have been the Wollongong Wizards, maybe.
Wollongong Wizards, yeah. I believe there was also a what are they? N-Swiss. I believe there was once upon a time, maybe a bit earlier, there was an N-Swiss triathlon squad. So yeah, we were never really, myself, I was never really guessing, you know,
what was next sort of thing.
What was next. Yeah, you kind of always knew there was a bit of a pathway. I think it wasn't really until the end of that where it was I was finishing as a junior, and it was a bit of a
what's happening.
Yeah, what's next?
Yeah. So if you were in those NTA days, I'm guessing NTA would have been the thing you were trying to get to.
Yeah. So we used to have the time trials back in the day. So that was back in the performance. They had you had your NTA, the 1K swim and a 5K run. So you either were trying to make the NTA team or you were trying to make your state team. So obviously, you either were good enough to be in the National Triathlon Academy or the Talent Academy, or your state pathway. That's what you were trying for. And it was again a clear direction in. You wanted to be in your state pathway until you were good enough to be in the Talent Academy. Yeah,
it's interesting. The last chat I had with this American athlete, Matthew Marquardt, and he was saying, because I was asking him what, out of interest, what's your VO2, what's your time trials and that sort of thing. And he was just like, man, honestly, I can't tell you because we don't do any testing at all.
Right.
He just focused, him and his coach just focus on what are the steps we need to do and what's, what's your training look like. And they just train. Yeah. And then I guess they just use, if we go well in races, then we're getting better.
Athletes are different. It's athletes respond differently. Like for me, I'm a bit of a nerd for the data, so that's only the only one we don't do is VO2, just because I already know I'm a very anaerobic athlete, so it's kind of a bit of a we don't need to be doing max sort of stuff. A lot of the stuff we do is ramp testing and you're below threshold,
inflection points and
trying to find all the very specific zones along the range. Hard's hard. Athletes are different. Some people love the data, some people don't care for it. Just finding what works.
Just a bit of a side comment there. So you get to the end there of I guess the state kind of national pathway. You're not in the NTA, I'm guessing. You didn't.
No. I think the NTA. I think when I was a junior, so I think when I was sort of actually starting to take this sport a bit more seriously, around that 17, 18, I decided to, I think the NTA might have actually finished around that time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about when the NTA did fold.
Because when I was 8, it would have been something that I would have tried for. When I was 18, I remember, so Craig Walton was my coach at the time, and he was in the NTA way back when, and he kind of almost came out of coaching retirement to coach the squad I was in. And full credit to him, he kind of very much turned my attitude around from, this is just a bit of fun to, okay, we can actually be very serious here. So it was really good for almost my transition period into taking those next steps as a professional athlete.
So you're talking about when NTA folded, because he went to like Bond or something like that, didn't he?
Yeah. So he came in, and that originally I was under a coach, Dane Robinson. So he was an athlete again back in the day. He was coached by Craig when he was an athlete, and he just couldn't coach anymore, and he didn't want to leave us high and dry. So he went to Craig and brought Craig in to replace him almost. So he was replacing Dane, and that's when he reached out and got a contract with Bond University, and we became the Bond University triathlon squad.
Right. Yeah, you're bringing it. Yeah, you're starting to enter a time frame now when I started, I guess, coaching more seriously, and I guess juniors who are wanting to perform. That's kind of, I'm catching up with you now.
that was 2018. That was in 2018 when, and I'm assuming the NTA would have folded by then. I don't believe that they were around.
Yeah. Okay. So NTA must have folded something like end of 2017 or something.
Yeah. I'm thinking so.
Yeah, maybe a year after Rio.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So it sounds like you've kind of been taken into the Bond Craig Walton fold there.
Yeah.
And what age are you now? Like 17, 18?
I was 17, 18 when I was started with Waldo when I was 17, and I think I was about 18, 19 towards the end. It was my last year of juniors that I went in with Waldo, so I would have been 17, 18, and again he was really good for me at the time. I still had this serious fixation on categorization. Again, that's only something I sort of I dare to admit now, because I always tried to brush it off. I was never that obsessed with it, but I very much was. I was almost led to believe that was the be all end all. Maybe because of the NTA program, maybe because of the athletes that were in it. When you are seeing guys that, again, I looked up to the likes of Matt Hauser and Kyle Wilde and all those kind of boys, and they were in the system. You're almost led to believe then that has to be the way to go.
So I guess when it's successful, I guess you do see it and you're like, I want to be in there because it's working.
For sure. And the Wollongong Wizards were still running around at the time, so you've got quite literally the best athletes in the world just down the road. So for sure. Yeah.
All right. So, how long were you with that environment for before?
I think it was close to 2 years. So when I was with Craig, again going into the last year of my junior career, I didn't really know what to expect. I was still racing athletes like your Lachlan Redmond, Oscar Dart, and all. Like Lachlan was just at his peak at that point. He was a gun junior. No one could really stop him. But I went on to race the Super Sprint weekend, the Super Sprint race weekend, and I got the win there against Oscar Dart at the time, who I didn't think I'd be able to beat him, but it was a bit of that was a bit of an eye opener in terms of I'm actually a good athlete. I can do this. I'm not just a competitor anymore. I'm actually a winner. So then from there we then went on to race the second race, and I got a second in that one. So it was a bit of we're actually getting consistent results. We tried to look outside of just the junior series and the Australian series, and we went to Bali and we raced in the Super League qualifier. That was awesome. I was racing against Tommy Severas, Pierre Lecour, Ryan Fisher. So at that point, I didn't know who they were at that point. So it's really cool to look back now and go, wow, I was on their wheel as an 18-year-old riding around. I think I finished 6th in that race. So that was a really cool experience. And again, we were just trying to look outside the box at other races. And in that year, I made the Australian team, the Australian juniors team. That was my first Australian team that I ever made. I was a reserve, unfortunately.
So that was for junior champs?
World junior champs. Yeah. So I missed the automatic selection, and I was on the reserve side with one of the other boys, and never actually got a call up on the start list in Switzerland. Worlds was in Switzerland at the time. But it was still, again, I got to go to Europe train in Spain. I got to race the Junior European Cup, and at that time we had the Commonwealth Games Association as a major sponsor, so we were pretty heavily funded. I remember it definitely was the cheapest European trip I've ever been on. So that was pretty cool. And again, I was an 18-year-old running around in France and Spain and Switzerland. So it was a really cool experience. And again, you come back from something like that just chomping at the bit, like I want to keep doing it.
So is that basically the big experience learning point you got from that first overseas was extra motivation? You've seen what's next kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It is very much obviously we're in Australia, we're a very big country, we can race all around Australia, but it's not the same as like what is next. It's not, the Germans can drive down the road and they're in France and they can go race a French Grand Prix or race another European Cup. We don't have that kind of exposure unless we're just racing New Zealand. So very much so going over there, seeing this is what's next, and this is the next step in my progression, I guess.
Kind of that first step out of the bubble, the Australian bubble.
For sure.
So things sound like they're going pretty well for you. You've had a heavily subsidized trip to Europe, winning races back home. Now I noticed, and I know you won't mind me bringing this up, but in your World Triathlon race results in that sort of 2019 period or so, there's a few DNFs start to creep in and that sort of thing, and maybe there's some like placings around the 40th and 30th in some elite races. So obviously you've gone from Australian podiums, Australian national level races podiums, and then you're seeing these results.
That elite jump,
so is that because of the big jump in quality of field?
Yeah, definitely. So I think obviously I was confident I was winning junior races, and then you go in and I'm not just racing Lachlan Redmond and Oscar Dart here. I'm racing Matt Hauser, Brendan Copeland, Hayden Wild is in a couple of those lists as well. So you are racing at that point quite literally some of the best in the world. So it is. I think it's a necessary just beating to take. I do think that you learn from just getting your ass handed to you. Like you kind of go.
And that's a really hard lesson to have, but how you deal with that, I think, is the big thing. Hey, because some people it could totally derail them and maybe push them out of the sport.
Yeah.
How did you cope with it and use it as fuel to keep going?
I just think I always believed that like it just couldn't end that way. Like it was never. I think I don't know. It was just never. Oh, I just got my ass handed to me. I should quit now. That was just never really my thought process. Yeah, it was just never really an option. I never thought like that. I thought, I'll just get him next time. I'm a bit of a. I don't know if it's a delusional confidence, but I don't think there's really ever been a start line that I've stood on that I haven't thought I could win the race. I could have been in Paris this year, and I could have thought I could have won Paris. Like again, that could just be delusional
as
confidence.
You should, as a competitor should. You shouldn't.
I don't believe there's really anything wrong with that. Some people might think it's cocky. Like I don't really care. It's what makes me the athlete I am. I walk into every single race briefing. It doesn't matter who's there. Again, could be cocky, but I think I could beat you. I think I could. In my head, there is at least one scenario where I beat you, or I beat everyone. So Stephen Bradbury, everyone could come down and come in a fatal crash, and I ride off to the win. Like there's a scenario where I come out on top. So I just gotta, fine.
No, that's the competitor. Okay. So you come back, you're motivated for more. So you've had a little. We're talking about support and how athletes can sort of stay in the game and work their way to having an elite career. What you come back home, what's your support starting to look like? Because obviously you're out of school now. Are you going to uni? Are you working full time? Do you have any government sport funding? How's everything starting to look now?
I've still to this day never had any government funding. I've never had any funding whatsoever. I've always had to work. So even when I was 16, I was working in coffee shops, or I was working in bars or bike shops, or I've always had to work from quite a young age. So I still work today, and for me, it's just no different. I mean, it's a bit. I'm enjoying the work I do now, but working was just always what I had to do. So yeah, I when I came back, again, like I said, I was chomping at the bit. Like I was just ready for more. I wanted to get back over to Europe. For me, that was the start of, all right, I guess the next 12 years of my life I'm 6 months in Australia, 6 months in Europe. Obviously still a bit unaware of how it all works and the process. I just didn't care. It was just get me to Europe every year. And then, unfortunately COVID hit the next year, 2020. So I made the move from the Bond Uni Tri Club, and unfortunately, it didn't end the way I would have liked. But that's in the past now, and that's that's just the way that coaching relationships happen sometimes. So I made the move to Mick Ferris, and I spent I believe almost the whole COVID period under MFPC. And that was a really hard few years for me.
What was your approach during that? Because I think when I was talking to Brandon, I think they just trained as usual. Or whereas some people, they took breaks and maybe did some alternate training activities or whatever.
Yeah, I think it was as triathletes and professional athletes, everything's very structured and very scheduled, and you have your daily routines, your weekly routines. Everything's very much like that. So when that's all you know and it's taken away from you, it is almost a bit of what's next? What do I do? The motivations, we're racers as well at the end of the day. Like, we do this sport to race and win. So to have that again taken away, it was almost a bit of I was just working and doing a little bit of training. Like, if I'm being transparent, I didn't really do anywhere near as much training as what I could have. You speak to the Europeans, and I think that's why the Europeans came out of the COVID period so dominant, because they almost used it as a 2 to 3 year training period, where
big training block.
Yeah, it was a big training block where we kind of just mucked around for quite a while. Always used it as a break. It was a 2 to 3 year break, not a 2 to 3 year training block.
I guess Australians are a bit more locked down, I guess, so it's probably harder for us.
We don't have the exposure of racing. It was harder to race, and you can't say, we're just going to have a race in. The French guys, they could probably still race their French Grand Prix, maybe, if it was just them. And if you just have the French athletes, you could still have 100-person start list there. So we just don't have that. So it definitely derailed, I think, the progression standpoint. I was just a little bit lost. There was a couple times, I can't remember when, maybe 2021, where I was very close to quitting. We were having a couple local races just out at Runaway Bay. A couple of the Queensland junior boys were racing in with the elites, and there was one race where I didn't make the A final. I was in the B final, and everyone was in the A final. I was kind of there, just very lost. Didn't know what to do. Didn't see an end to a positive end to the triathlon career. I remember sitting in the driveway, just in tears, thinking that was kind of the end of my triathlon. I remember speaking to Mick, and it was very much like we just didn't really know what was next. I was training really well. I've always been a very good trainer, but the race results just weren't, I guess, showing that. And that was when Greg Young from Body Science, he's a good family friend of ours, and he reached out to me. I think my mum might have spoken to him, and he reached out and he basically said, "Look, you're not going to quit. I'm not going to let you quit. I'm going to bring you on board. You're going to be a sponsored athlete of Body Science, and I'm going to get you a psychologist. Like, you work with our psych, you work with our nutritionist, be a part of our team. We'll get you going." And
so almost a bit of a turning point there, eh?
It was, and I speak to him quite often, still to this day, and I tell him that quite often, that he very much is, I owe him so much of what I have now and what I could potentially have in the future. So I'll always be very loyal to him and Body Science for helping me get here. So
that's good. No, that's good to have people in your corner like that. Hey, it's almost like you don't need a whole bunch of stuff, but if you have a couple of things that are really
someone that has a bit of, like, if they believe in you, sometimes it really does just take someone to sit you down and say, I'm not going to let you do that. I believe in your talent and I believe in your ability. Yeah. And again, it's why I'm sitting here with the results I've got, and hopefully the future results I'll get.
Yeah, definitely. And so it sounds like that was kind of good timing, with more or less, things opening up with COVID and a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel.
For sure.
Fast forward a little bit. How did you come out of COVID? What races did you go to? And, how did your support network start to come together more?
Yeah, so I think that it all started to, I guess, the light at the end of the tunnel of COVID was 2022 for me. I was still in the same squad at the time. There was a couple of other boys, and we were looking at, it was the first year going back over to Europe. Yeah. Looking back at it now, I was not ready at all. I probably shouldn't have gone, but again, it goes with my belief of, you got to get your ass kicked to realize where you really are and what you need to be doing. So I wasn't racing that well on the Australian series. I think there was a couple still pretty shocking results in Devonport, Australian champs, and even Mooloolaba standard distance champs. I think, I didn't even know where I was. It was another shocking result. But yeah, I wasn't racing well enough to really justify myself going to Europe. But I just thought that was what you had to do. So unfortunately, again, I was at that time left without a coach. So I left the squad I was in, and I didn't have a coach for a good 8 months almost. I was overlooking my own program. I was writing my own program, and that was just the one that I could have possibly been doing.
Lachlan Jones coaching.
I had no idea what I was doing at the time. I didn't know enough about what I needed to be doing. So I was in Croatia with one of the other boys, which again, it was just not a great place for us to be training. It was
as you do, random.
Yeah, I know. We're in Croatia, and we would spend a bit of time in Germany with my team. It was just a year in Europe that was all over the shop. I was with my German team, and that ended up just costing a lot of money, and it was a lot of wasted money. And I would say a wasted sort of Europe trip, but again, I learned so much.
It's like contrast training. You learn what not to do, maybe.
I learned everything. Well, I remember I was speaking to Mum, just so upset over there, just thinking everything's going wrong, like nothing's going right. And she sat me down and said, just write a list of all the things you're learning. So flights, what airlines should you not fly with? What went wrong? Hotels, what should you not do in terms of boarding, airports, anything you can think of that's going wrong, just write it down so you know. I've never looked at the list, but I know the list is huge. Like it's
probably just locked in your memory.
Yeah, exactly. I know, I've made those mistakes enough times now that it's fine. But at that time, again, I didn't really know what I was doing. We didn't have accommodation booked for the second half of our trip. And I've got a very good friend, Ollie Turner, who is a British athlete. And
I was hoping we'd get around to talking about him.
Yeah, and again, when you talk about, I guess, sort of people that, like you Craig Walton back in the Bond University days, Greg Young from keeping me from quitting the sport. Ollie definitely is a big part in that, in terms of, he could tell I wasn't racing to my potential. I was a bit lost in the sport, and he was in the Cardiff system. He'd been in the Cardiff system for 3 to 4 years at that point. And he was racing very well. He was beating me in races, which he was, and I hate to admit it. I hate to admit it, but he was a better athlete than me at the time. He was definitely I'll never let him hear that. But yeah, he was better than me at the time, and yeah, he just said he was getting ready for the Birmingham Commonwealth Games at the time.
Oh, right.
So he raced for Jersey, and he was getting ready for the commies, and it was about 6 weeks before when I had nowhere to go. He just said, "Come and sleep on the blow-up mattress at the end of my bed. You can come stay with us." And
that's how that all started. Yeah.
That's how that all started. I was sleeping on a little single blow-up mattress at the foot of his bed. And yeah, again, I wasn't necessarily getting coached by anyone. I just jumped into their program and said, what's the worst that can happen? Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? I just followed. I met his coach, Luke Watson, who has now been my coach for the last 2 years. And I think I ended up staying there for nearly 2 months, staying in Cardiff. It was just, Ollie's one of my best friends, so it was like staying at home with a mate. It was fine. And,
it feels like home, hey?
It does. And
that's the hard thing back on overseas.
Yeah, it very much does. It very much is, and that's why I've been able to. I just spent 6 months in Europe.
Seemed like a bigger trip.
Yeah, and it was sad to leave. It was sad to leave Cardiff for me, that one. But yeah, so I met Luke, my coach now, in 2022. We kind of got to the end of that Europe trip, and I asked him if we could have a meeting, and I just told him, I was like, I'd love for you to coach me. I fell in love with the Cardiff program and the Cardiff philosophy, how they go about training, how they structure their training, the science behind their I can't obviously reveal too much because I get in trouble, but it was there was nothing that they ever did that was not warranted.
Everything, they didn't have a reason behind
it. Everything that they do has a purpose, and it's still to this day, everything we do has a purpose. It's scientifically justified. Everything's lab tested. And I liked seeing that. I became obsessed with the process of learning, and just seeing how I physically kind of worked with that program.
And obviously it's working as well.
It is. And obviously I was just nodding my head saying, yep, at the time when he was trying to teach me, but after doing it for 2 years, the program makes sense. And Ollie and myself, very, very different athletes, and we do the same structure, but we do very different training within that structure. Again, it's not a one size fits all. You shouldn't be having athletes just doing the same stuff every time. We have different physiologies. It just doesn't make sense for athletes to all be doing the same. Ollie and I are the perfect example of that. I left that 2022 season with another almost light at the end of the tunnel moment of I've got a new coach.
Like a signpost of, okay, this is the way I'm going now.
It was. It was a nice sort of, we're going in this direction, and like Luke is a contracted coach with British Triathlon, so he didn't have to take me. He could have just said no. So again, I thank him very much for the work he's done for me. He didn't have to do that. He's just, I was almost like, it was fine for me. I think I was a little bit of a passion project I very much complement his style of training. So it was almost, all right, let's see how good we can get this kid. And it's been working wonders since.
So we can start to see a bit of an evolving picture of how your support network's set up now. You've got a bit of a Welsh base with a Welsh coach and kind of training environment for your European season. You come back home, you've got your coach you're connected with programs and that sort of thing, and you've got some sponsors on board now. Things are starting to get a bit more stabilized. Talk us maybe through about where you're starting to get results and things like that. Where does Triathlon Australia start to sit in there? Are they starting to talk to you and say you're hitting some benchmarks now? We'd like to support you, or?
Yeah, there was a little bit, I'd say, at the start of 2023. I came out, and because we'd done such a big off season, and it was obviously such a productive off season coming back from 2022 in my first year under the program. I think it was almost I can't remember. It was Bustleton Super Sprint Champs.
Yep.
Where I remember running with Luke Willian, who at the time I just thought I had no right to be running next to this guy. He's one of the best we have. And we ended up having a sprint finish. And again, I thought that was the turning point. That was another big step in the right direction. Yeah. And yeah, there was a bit of interest from there. I had some people in the administration, and there was a couple of coaches and some support network. I had a meeting with a couple of people about what I plan to do over in Europe. Under 23 Worlds was my big goal. That was the target.
That was Pontevedra year?
That was Pontevedra. Yeah, that was Pontevedra. So that was the big goal, and everything we were doing was around qualification for that race. So again,
this is where you have to sort of tie into selection policy with Triathlon Australia.
Yeah. So we were talking about the selection races and the automatic criteria and the discretionary criteria, and I think the automatic criteria was. I don't actually believe there was an automatic criteria at the time because we weren't racing. Oh no, sorry. Bradley Course got it. He won when he won.
Port Douglas.
Port Douglas. He won Port Douglas, but at that time it wasn't win Port Douglas, and I think now
it was top 3 at Port Douglas, wasn't it?
Top 3 at Port Douglas. Top 3 at Port Douglas, but only the first. So obviously him and Oscar got first and second. So Brad got that automatic spot. Whereas now I believe you also got to get like a top 15 in a World Cup, which I mean for me is completely unrealistic to be asking under 23s to be doing that. But we didn't have that at that time. So then it was just chase points, chase any sort of result that I could use to reflect that I was ready for an under 23 World Championships, which I think the Bustleton race helped a lot. I think I got a 10th in a European Cup that year, or an 11th in one of the Austrian races. So again, I had some of my best results at a European Cup that year.
So that year in 23, how many races would have you done, and like where in the world? You went to Bustleton, WA.
Yeah, so I went to Bustleton.
Port Douglas.
We were in Port Douglas. We raced in Wanaka in New Zealand at the start of the year. We had a couple of Austrian races. There was where else did we race? There was a French race we did, and I can't really remember off the top of my head. But yeah, there was quite a few races all over Europe,
all over the world. So and so people when they watch this and they might forget earlier on, you're 100% self-funded. Yeah. At this point, you've got one kind of main sponsor.
And at that point, it wasn't financial. At that point, it was just product based. So in 2023, it was I was laboring actually on a construction site. So all off season, I was labor on a construction site. Just lifting bricks and throwing hammers at people. Like that's just what I did. So that was just again, it was all and at that time I couldn't have been able to do it without my mum's help. So I think she helped me more towards the back end when she also came over to like in the end watch World Champs. But it was essentially from the end of 2022 to when we went over to Europe in 23. It was work as much as possible around training so that I could save up and then spend all that money just surviving in Europe.
And the pattern.
That's all it was. It was save your money so you can spend it all in Europe, and then you're going to come back and work again. So it was all self-funded. There was
Now a birdie told me when you were sort of in the pathway in that Bond era, you were thinking pretty heavily about categorization.
Yeah.
And maybe a year or two ago, am I true in saying you were offered categorization, but maybe turned it down for some reason?
Yeah. So
are you happy to talk us through that?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was again, I was like I said, completely obsessed with the categorization, and that was what I thought was the be all end all. And then at the end of 2023, after I'd had a pretty successful year, I got 2 more podiums in a Connie Cup post Worlds. I raced World Championships. So a lot of, I guess, big dream things that I thought, might never happen. They happened. And when I got back from World Champs, I was offered a nicer contract from Body Science. So things were progressing with Body Science, and we were taking a lot, I guess, more time to work around commercial sponsors, and we were really diving heavy into them because I didn't know categorization was going to be a possibility for me at the time. So and I'd built a pretty strong network, I guess, around myself with Body Science, having a nutritionist there, a psychologist there that I get on so well with. I have Brad Beer at Pogo, who's my physio. I have a masseuse there. So I had a really strong network kind of built that I built myself. So I went through the categorization process because I wanted to see what was offered and what I could get. And I did have a bit of intention of going forward with that. Dan Atkins obviously had his big squad, and rocking up and seeing all the QAS stuff on poolside, I thought, that's the support I need. That's what I want. And obviously money makes the world go round. So I thought, there's got to be some sort of financial support in it. And I was put on I was offered an emerging level.
So
categorization, just the entry level stuff. Maybe because it was my first time being there. I'm not too sure, but sort of when I went in depth about what that looks like, how that would go about, I don't know. It was almost, hearing it was disappointing, I guess, because again, when I went through the process, they didn't offer me anything that I didn't already have. So it might be I guess it's similar to, I guess, my thought process about it now. Why fix something that's not broken? Well, I'm not looking to fix something that's not broken.
You've applied some critical thinking to, this is what they've got, this is what I've already got. Does it outweigh, or
it was essentially the same. All they were really offering was what I already have. I would have to leave. I would have had to have left my coach. So I would have had to obviously leave Cardiff and go into
that wasn't an option to stay.
No, there was no option to be able to utilize the, I guess, the categorization and be able to stay with my coach. So that was, if I was to take up categorization, I would have to leave my coach. And I guess that was just something I wasn't willing to do. I feel like we'd achieved so much in 12 months. What could we achieve in 2-3 years? So,
for sure.
I knocked categorization back, which was, if they would have offered me categorization a year or two earlier, I would have jumped a bit for it. I would have taken it with 2 hands. So 12 months later, and I guess a bit more maturity and a bit more thinking for myself and what's best for me. It's my career at the end of the day. It's nobody else can have a say, but
Your athletes only have one shot at it, So
and if I believe in something, then that's what I'm going to do.
No, I love it, mate. Look, I realise I've had you for a while already, so I don't want to push the friendship. If you kind of maybe wrap it up, if you were to give some tips to some of the younger ones coming up, because I get the feeling and the vibe that there's a lot of junior athletes coming through who are just a bit, they're a bit too, I don't know if it's shy or reserved or not willing to kind of take that front step and ask for help, or, go to a sponsor and ask for some support, or give them their resume or their race history and all that sort of thing. But whereas you're taken the initiative and actively gone out and done these things. It's not like everyone Body Science and that just came to you out of the blue. There's been some input from your end. What's helpful advice you could give some of these athletes coming up to help them start building their own support network to keep them going?
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, it all started, but I heard a story about, I think it was Craig Alexander and Crowe back in his day. And at the start of each season, this is back with the Yellow Pages, back when the Yellow Pages books were a thing. And I remember
people used to deliver those things.
yeah, I know. It was crazy. It wasn't just on your computer screen. But I remember hearing a story that he would sort of sit down at the start of this. This might be false, but I took the truth and ran with it. And he would flip through the Yellow Pages and just, that looks like a sponsor I want, call it up, and he would just call them up and just, hey, I'm Craig Alexander, I'm an Australian triathlete, such and such, I'd love to work with you. And I wasn't going through a Yellow Pages, but I was going through, I was scanning other sporting federations, and I scan other, I guess, sporting companies, and basically who I want to, I guess, connect with. And you find them on any, like, social media makes it so easy these days. You can find an email, you can find a LinkedIn page, you can just go on their Instagram and DM them, like put together a resume of some sort and just send it out. Like, get networking, utilize, like, networking is the reason I'm able to do what I do now. Like, if it wasn't for that, I'd be probably still on the job site throwing shovels around. So, I think just grow your network as big as possible. Talk to as many people as you possibly can. Utilize who you have. I'm with companies now that I never would have thought they would have an interest in triathlon. There's some construction companies, developers, stuff that I didn't know that had interest in triathlon, but you never know. You really never know until you ask. You just got to ask. You just put your name out there, put yourself out there, put yourself in uncomfortable positions, have those conversations, and they're going to say no. You're going to have people say no. I've had so many people say no, and that's fine. You say, thank you for your time. All the best.
They might circle back eventually.
They might circle. You just never know. So, utilize the people you got around you. Utilize the connections you have. Utilize whatever your strengths are. I love my social media, and you said before, like, I've worked a bit with Harry King, who does a lot of my videography, and he does a lot of content.
He must have a drone now or something, does he?
He has a drone now. He nearly hit me in the head with a drone the other day, so we're on thin ice with that thing. But it's that sort of stuff. I love the creative aspect of making content for social media. So that's sort of my path, and that's what I promote. But don't be afraid to reach out to athletes. Like, I know athletes are always keen to help, like myself, and I guarantee any of the other boys or girls that are at our level, we're always willing to put a hand up and share stories like this. Coaches, staff members, it should be an athlete's first. It should be an athlete's first. It's sport. I like to think we're the product, but there's just keep going. Keep chipping away at it, and if you believe enough and you're stubborn enough, then there'll be a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, no, I love it, mate. Look, it's been awesome having you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we'll get this up probably next week, and hopefully share it far and wide. And hopefully we can have some sort of effect on helping more athletes convert into some kind of elite career.
You've even got a lot of the Yohan Collins. Me and Yohan have just started coaching ourselves, and we're hoping to sort of start under the Surfers Paradise Triathlon banner in the coming weeks. So, and again, we've got our passion. Yeah, we've got our passion project of we want to see juniors. We want to have a bit of a pathway for juniors. I would hate to get to the end of my career and see elite triathlon die. It's just we've got such a rich history in the sport. It just can't. That can't be a possibility. It has to go up from here.
Yeah.
So.
And look, someone's got to do something about it. Like yourself in Yohan, and that's why I started the Patreon and started trying to get this stuff out there, because it needs to be done, and it just needs a few, pardon the pun, the movie, a few good men or women to get it, to push it.
Mate, you're right. And if enough of us are making this movement, then change will happen.
Yeah. Awesome, mate. Thanks for the chat. I'll just
course.
stop the recording.